I'm getting ready to pot up some of the tomatoes that we've actually sown about 2 weeks ago. So we have a few of these little units here, these little cubes that hold 16 cells. So our mortgage lifters and our Cherokee purples, I'm going to pot up because they're starting to get their true leaves and they're getting a little leggy. So I want to give them more soil depth. So we're going to transplant them up into these 4-celled pots. These are from Epic Gardening. And they're super durable. I mean, can't move them. Pretty much stand on them. They have the nice slits in the side for good aeration and good root development. So this is something that we invested in for this year, is good quality seed starting material so things aren't breaking, so we can pot up easy and get the smaller plants out into the bigger ones without breaking them. As for our tomatoes, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and pot up. I know there's a debate on that you should thin them out, but I don't like thinning them out at this point. I'm going to leave all the plants in there of this one cell, so there may be 2 to 3 plants in there that I pot up to the larger ones. The reason why I do that, and I like doing that, is because then it gives me a better chance to plant more plants in the end and not disturb that root ball. Technically you could cut the plant off, but then if there's any other disease or anything that spreads, it could wipe out all the plants. So I prefer just potting up the little individual cells with everything in there. Now if I do see any disease or anything, I will cut it out, but this ensures me I get more plants at the end when I put them in the garden. And then when I do fertilize, I'll fertilize them heavy, so again, they're not going to really compete for nutrients. They'll all get the same. So we'll monitor, we'll get started. Let's get to potting up. What I focus on when I'm ready to pot up is looking at how tall the plants are. If they get too leggy, that means they're trying to search for light and you want to give them more stability. If the roots are coming through the bottom, you don't want them sitting in the water too much, because then you can have disease. And because these cells have less soil in them, I want to add more soil and be able to bury part of the seedling, because all these little hairs on the tomatoes can potentially become roots. So then you're creating a stronger root system for those plants to start off on. And then really, again, just inspecting, see the good roots there, and making sure there's no fungal activity or any disease on the plants to get started. Taking out the little plugs of tomatoes, setting them in the pot, and just adjusting their heights, because I want to bury some of the tomato as well. These are our mortgage lifters. So just make sure they're separated a little bit, again, because I'm not trimming them, I'm not separating them. I'm going to bury them. I already have one done, so I've buried about half the stems, and then when we get them all in there, then we'll water on the bottom of the tray so we're not dampening off and shocking them too much. So we got a slow germinating seed in this cell, but I'm still going to try to take it all out and transplant it. That one may not survive because I only see one of the cotyledons coming out, so that's why we plant more than one seed in the cell. Try to get as much as I can out. Put a little bit more down in there, push down a little bit, and then just tap that root. I'm probably going to cover this little seedling down in there. You'll be food for the big plants. And just very lightly tamp it down. looks like a very healthy seedling. So far I'm liking this seeding mix, so it's nice and light, no big chunks. And that's what we had an issue with last year. Talked about it when we were sowing these seeds, that the substrate we had last year was super woody and just big chunks and wouldn't really hold its moisture, so looking forward to this year. So as they're growing and they get a little bit larger, so like these are good for example, but I'd like to come in and sort of just tap them a little bit, wiggle them a little bit, because what that will do is strengthen up the side walls of the stems, sort of mimics like wind blowing. So you're actually helping them to harden off a little bit before you take them outside and ready to transplant. So tickle them.
While Nick works on potting up or up potting, I just wanted to share a little bit of how our seedlings are doing. So all of these were all planted on 1/7, so January 7th. They're 2 weeks old today, and they're doing fantastic. But if you look around, we planted 2 of almost every single item that we have on here. So 2 different seed makers or seed providers, or just from 2 different sources. And if you look at calendula, for example, not one of the fairy morse seeds actually came up, but all of the calendula seeds that I got from a friend did come up. So that's one of the reasons that if you have 2 varieties of the same exact seeds, or rather if you have 2 different sources of the same seed, I would go ahead and just plant them, because you run into situations like this where one performs better than the other, one takes a lot longer than the other, one happens to expire quicker than the other. So this just gives you a little bit of an insurance that maybe you didn't realize you needed. And if you wait to see if they come up, like for example, if I'd only planted the fairy morse ones, we might be dealing with a rush of, oh, we need to get those started now, or we might miss our window altogether. So that's one of the reasons why we did that. And we pretty much did it all down the line. We have 2 different sources for almost everything. And that's what the chamomile looks like. So it's looking good. Some of the lavender came up, and again, all of these are from 2 separate sources, just to have insurance.
We got our tomatoes potted up that were getting a little bit too big for the small germination pots, and they're back in the grow tent warming up a bit, because there is a big temperature difference between the tent and here. Out here it's 55 degrees, and there probably it's around 70, so praying there's minimal shock, but I think they'll do fine. Now we're gonna do a little bit, get some of these cells reused for some peppers. We had a lot of different varieties of hot peppers given to us that we use for hot sauce, and we saved some of the seeds. So peppers need a little bit more time than tomatoes do to really germinate, and so the soil's got to be really warm. So I think we're going to put the heat mat underneath some of these, or just reuse these 2 cells and put them in that big flat that has that heat mat, keep them in there. So we're starting our peppers after we started the tomatoes, because they do like the heat. So we'll plant tomatoes first and then plant our peppers. But again, when it gets too hot outside, like it is here in North Texas during the summer, nothing's gonna want to grow, so it'll stop growing. But later on when summer is ending, the fall, that's sort of when they take off and explode. So hopefully we can get some good peppers. We should get several harvests early summer and then fall. So let's go.
If you're working on getting your seed order in, these peppers we loved so much. So these are Zapotec jalapenos, which were actually small. They're not like the big poppers that you would get that are, gigantic. These are actually normal size, like this big. but they're so delicious. And the other thing, and prolific, we got so many fruit out of plants. The other thing we really liked were these Jimmy Nardellos. They're Italian and they were pretty big. They were probably like 7 inches and they curve a little bit, but they were so good because you could eat them with anything that you would eat Italian. You could slice them up for sandwiches. They were absolutely delicious. And the other one that we really enjoyed were these Chou de Chero peppers. And we always say them wrong, but these kind of look like a Jimmy Nardello, sort of. But you can eat them when they're green or red, and they taste so good. What you can do with these is make paprika with them. Or you can just, like, we cut them up and just use them as a sweet pepper, but they're so good. So these 3 varieties are Baker Creek. We don't have a sponsorship with Baker Creek or anything like that. We just really, really enjoyed these peppers and figured we would share.
Just wrapping up our final seeds starting that we've done today. We've got some peppers seeded, a lot of hot ones. We've got some marigolds and just a couple herbs that we're going to start. The other herbs will direct sow, but yeah, we'll call that a day for seed starting. Probably next week we'll do a little bit more seeds and actually plant some onion starts that we have. So hope you guys are staying safe and warm. And as always, thanks for watching. You are awesome and you are loved.